There's an element to what's about to happen that is, on TV shows when they sometimes will show you the same scene but following a different character.
Oh, yeah, very Rashomon.
Rachmaninoff? No.
I was, thought that would be helpful, but
listen,
not at all.
It would be so helpful to the people who know the reference.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm not one of them.
I'm Charlie Sohn, a screenwriter and journalist.
I'm Agnes Reese, a pop singer and songwriter.
And this is Mysteries of the Euroverse.
On this episode, we're diving deeper into the Eurovision songwriting process.
First, we talk to Wouter Hardy, co-writer of the first Billboard Hot 100 charting Eurovision song in a quarter century, Duncan Laurence's 2019 winning hit, Arcade.
Then, we talk to NYLAN and Benji Alasu, who along with Nemo and Linda Dale wrote Switzerland's 2024 Eurovision winning song, The Code.
Take a look behind the scenes at all the scandal songs and queens. So come along as we traverse all the mysteries of the Euroverse. All the mysteries of the Euroverse.
We are back with another episode of Mysteries of the Euroverse.
We had such a good time talking about songwriting. It made us think this really needs a part two.
Talking about the diversity of songwriting styles at Eurovision. I think we both were feeling like, well, we should bring more of that diversity to the podcast. We interviewed Ludo and Julian, the writers of this year's song.
Le Poupe monte le son.
Yeah, yes. This is the song representing Luxembourg, sung by Laura Thorin. Ludo and Julian come from a very particular background that happens to be very similar to mine. As we talked about on our first songwriting episode, there are a lot of different ways that a song gets written.
Yes. Our first interview is a writer on one of the most successful Eurovision songs of all time.
Yes. This song was the song that really brought Eurovision back to the charts.
We're talking about the song Arcade that was sung by Duncan Laurence.
We were very excited to have Wouter Hardy on the podcast. Wouter co-wrote the song with Duncan Laurence, and as you'll hear, it was a very, very close collaboration that actually spanned 2 years as they developed this song on and off. Wouter's process is kind of interesting because he does come from a background where acoustic instruments and acoustic recording is very much a part of his process.
Absolutely.
Even though he is a producer and he obviously takes advantage of technology, you'll hear that he has a real preference for older synthesizers, for ways of manipulating sound that are practical and acoustic rather than digital.
But before we jump into the interview with Wouter,
Yes.
let's remind ourselves of the iconic Eurovision winning song, Arcade, Duncan Laurence.
I spend all of the love I saved. We were always a losing game. Small town boy in a big arcade. I got addicted to a losing game. All I know, loving you is a losing game.
We are here with Wouter Hardy, who wrote Duncan Laurence's Eurovision winning Arcade, John's Tears, Tout l'univers, and Alika's Bridges. Wouter, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
To start with, can you talk a bit about how you first came to music?
My background is coming from the classical department from 9 until 18. I fell in love with the piano. I got a really cheap keyboard and I was just fully addicted to it every day, every night. I played with the radio. I didn't know what to play. It's just by ear, everything. Then I started to do the conservatory in Rotterdam, Code Arts, and played piano there for 1 year and 1 year production. And then I quit because I was so busy with touring. I was playing in Kovacs. I was the musical director, keyboard player, trumpet player, backing vocalist, and I did all the percussion in a big band that was playing from Glastonbury. And then we did a support act for Robbie Williams. And then I started to produce even more on the road. So I brought my laptop and then I thought, this is way more fun than just only playing in a band and just waiting until the artist is ready to go on tour again. I quit the band and the publisher, Sony, in the Netherlands was asking me if they could help me with this new adventure of mine. I said, it would be great to meet new vocalists that I can work with. And the first one was Duncan Laurence. Even before I signed the papers, I already went with him in the studio and we started working on Arcade as the first song that we did together. And in those 2 years that we worked together, we worked on several songs, including Arcade the whole time. I already got a rough demo from a guy from Sweden, Shhhh. I deleted all the music and started from scratch again. So Duncan and I worked almost every week on that song and a few others. And then it evolved and it evolved. And then we went to a different tempo and more into like electronic beats, also from Arcade. No one heard that before, and it's better that way. Then we got all these opinions from the publisher, from friends of his and friends of mine. It was not healthy for our working space and our bubble. So I said, okay, let's just not show it to anyone for a couple of months and just go into our small bubble in the studio. We see each other every week. We work. And then this version came, the version that you hear now. It was his vocal coach at the Voice of Holland. She heard this song and she was blown away by it. So she said, I really want to introduce this song to Eurovision. And then Duncan called me like, what do you think? I said, Arcade, that song? No, that's not going to work. That's never going to work. I always say that's a festival that has a dancing chicken in it. You know, I said, Arcade will never do good there. But then Ilse was so amazed by the song that she said, no, Wouter, I think you can go into top 5 with this song. And then I said, okay, let's do it. And then we went full in. I recorded some more strings in the studio and some more drum layers, and then it was done.
The song evolved over 2 years, right? And yeah. I think somewhere you said that there are over like 160 tracks on the mix for it.
I thought I have to throw everything in this project, everything in this song. So it was an overkill of sounds. It was like crazy beats and a lot of vocal stacks and like way too much. We just lost the song. And now I learned through the years, the most important thing in the song is the song and the message and the singer. And I was like putting everything in. And then Duncan and I were in my studio going crazy with synthesizers and with beats and then changing the tempo. We even changed the key. I think I recorded the vocal 3 times again. Then we said, okay, we have to go back to the core of the song and let's just strip it all down. Let's just go behind the piano and let's see just the piano and just the vocal, what comes out. And then we felt the magic again. And then we made some more other progressions. We wrote another bridge. And I also came up with the chords in the end of the song that goes up. We didn't listen to the radio. We didn't listen to hits that were there at the time. We just listened to Hans Zimmer, like film scores. Yeah. Wouter Hardy from Iceland. I'm a big fan of him. And then we said, okay, this is the vibe we want to go. As a producer, you make a bed that the singer is warm and cozy in, and they can just be on top of it. And I think we managed to do that in the end. The piano of Arcade is a layer of 3 pianos. It's one real piano from the studio. We put this felt cotton between the hammers and the strings. So you have this really small and damped sound that is warm. I found this plugin from Wouter Hardy actually, and I layered that one because it has a big space around it, like really big reverbs, and it was beautiful. And I used that as a layer under the real piano that I played in. And then we came up with the intro, the do 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 do. And then with the vocal from Duncan going through a really old space echo, really vintage thing.
In a way, the way you tackle the piano mirrors, I feel like how vocal production is done now, because to get the more echo, people often layer a whisper track underneath. You know, they'll do vocal doubles or even a falsetto double.
I'm a pianist myself, so I'm constantly working on piano sounds, and I really like the real thing. It's a really hard instrument to record. It's so broad of the spectrum. Yeah, you want to have the low end, you want to have the width. I've improved way more now, so I don't need the samples anymore.
You worked very closely with Duncan for an extended period of time. What were the advantages of that close relationship, and were there challenges?
I think the advantages and the challenge at the same time is that you become friends. It's such a close relationship. I always say I'm not only a producer, but I'm also a psychiatrist. You know, and that's with every singer. They come into the studio and they put their whole story on the table. So I have to listen to just their story and their struggles or their whatever is in their life. They put everything in their lyrics. So that you become friends is really great. There's no ego. There's no business relationship in the beginning because we had no releases. That was a big advantage that we didn't have a deadline, and you can say anything to each other. Like if you don't like something, if you like something. And now when I work with someone and I have only 2 days, everything goes faster. So you can't build that stronger relationship. You can't do it anymore like that. There's a label involved. There's a publisher involved. There's a management involved. Everyone has an opinion. Everybody.
On both Arcade and Stars, you have choral elements that sit very back, and they create a really distinctive mood.
There are no stars in the hills, but still I find myself reaching for them, fighting for them, dying for them. Still, there are no stars in the hills.
I remember in that time I was watching Shakir King. I think he's a great producer. He showed a video of him producing the vocals, and they recorded his backing vocals in a bathroom. It's such a different sound than the lead vocal. Like I still do this day. I record backing vocals in a different room. So I use room mics. That creates such a different vibe and such a different environment that makes the lead vocal way more clear. I think a lot of people record backing vocals, same mic, same room, super close to the microphone, and then they put a reverb on it. You can get away with it, but if you record backing vocals in a different room, further from the mic, and use the space, then you get the vibe what we did with Arcade. If you hear the big chorus, there's also me in there.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Yeah, the low ones is my voice, which is really cool. That intro vocal of Duncan on Arcade, that is the same line as the piano, is recorded that way. It's one mic, really far away in a room, and then put through a vintage echo box. And then you get this really weird, you can't put your finger on it sound. And that's what I like.
Having had multiple songs at Eurovision, what are some of the unique challenges of writing a song for Eurovision? Or is your process the same no matter where the song is supposed to end up in the end?
Yeah, it's funny because with Arcade, of course, we didn't know that it was going to Eurovision. So it was already there. Then I was asked to go to Switzerland and to work with John Steers. So I went to this writing camp, and it was a beautiful studio where also Rolling Stones worked and Lady Gaga. It was crazy. And I thought, okay, I have to write a Eurovision song. How? The other one went so naturally. And then I thought, okay, write whatever feels good and just don't do it differently than normal. So I brought Nina Sampelmans, which is a great lyric songwriter. And we sat behind the piano, as I always do. And we wrote Tout l'univers in 3 hours. Even before John came into the room to listen to us. Because I didn't even met him. I played the song that I already recorded a version with the piano and the vocal of Nina. And then he said, when did you guys make this? This morning. And then he was like, this could be my song. And then again, they called me and he said, you have another Eurovision song. Good luck. And then it was a really special year for me because it was in Rotterdam, also because of Arcade, of course.
Yeah.
Duncan sang Arcade and Stars, both songs that I did. And John sang, of course, Tout l'univers. We became third. And I also got the Marcel Benson Composer Award that year. So it was like boom, 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 boom. Everything was crazy. And then 2 years later, I got an email from management of Alika from Estonia.
There is always time to get back on track. Tearing down the walls slowly every step. Now I see myself building up a world of bridges.
We worked and worked for 2 days. And the second day we sat behind the piano and I just played something and she just sang Bridges almost on top of it right away. And luckily we have the voice memo still. And then I said, this is amazing. Let's record.
In all three cases here, you knew who you were developing the song for. So in what ways do you shape your songwriting to the artist you're writing for?
The way I work is with the artist. So I don't like to make something and then pitch it to different artists. For me, it's the connection between me and the artist. And if I can serve their story, it's almost like a movie. You know, Hans Zimmer always say it's all about the story, but it is like that for me. The special thing about John, he has this really high voice that he can reach, which is super special. The thing with John, he's so enthusiastic that he already wanted that in the first chorus. I said, no. We need to wait. Everyone needs to wait for a big moment. They have this one high note that everyone is like, waiting for. Yeah. And that worked. So we really needed to work towards that moment as much as possible. Just don't give away too much in the beginning. That's also with Arcade. That's why I changed the chords in the end of the chorus and going so high with the vocals as well. And the strings, a lot more strings. With Alika, she also has a great high voice. And we also had a big moment in the end of the song.
Because you're both a songwriter and a producer, I'm sort of wondering, is that all one process for you?
With the artist, for the first day in the room, I'm just focusing on the song, just the song itself. If they want a ballad, I can sit behind the piano and it's going to be that in the end. But I'm just now working with an amazing artist that is singing soul, bossa nova, and pop together in one blend. Then I'm coming into the studio with a beat already. But what I like is to put a different hat on sometimes, literally. Like
that's amazing.
If I'm a songwriter, I'm just focusing on the artist. When I'm an engineer, I'm focusing more on producing and getting the sounds right, getting the mix right.
You met John's Tears at a songwriting camp. What's your experience of those, and how do you think that affects the songwriting process?
I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's just, you have one day for one song, and then you write and try. And then you know that there are other groups and their song is maybe better. I just do my thing everywhere. I'm not going into like a dance thing because it's just not me. And it's funny because I'm in a session with someone who's never did a ballad or whatever, and I just write a ballad with them. And then you get something special because it's so different. I had so many camps that you have all these blasting songs and all these beats and all the crushed, and they already wanted to sound like a record, but it's a writing camp. So I just try to write a great song in a day, just with a simple piano, maybe some strings or a guitar, and then they get silent, because they think, oh man, this really hits. And the previous songs were maybe a great beat and a great hook, but that's it. A lot of people think we have to make something that is hot right now in that room. So people think, oh, that's great. That can work on TikTok. Okay, that I believe that. I want to make something that people listen to for years, and they listen to the whole song and not 10 seconds. You can also pick up great part out of a song of 4 minutes, just take the chorus and put it on TikTok and it can also be something, you don't have to make a song that is fitting the algorithm fully.
With Tout l'univers, listening to the French version of the song, like how do you think the language affected the vibe of the song?
I don't know any French, so it was just the vibe. I really didn't know what he was saying, but I think his vibe is coming across better in French to the audience than in English. He's super French, so you hear that in his English pronunciation. So sometimes it's cool, but he was way more confident recording the French version. And you hear that. And the vibe is sometimes equal as important than the lyrics, because I know a lot of people don't listen to lyrics at all. They had a French sentence in there, I think it was in the verse or whatever. And I said, the meaning is great, but I don't like the sound of it. Just that sentence doesn't work. And then they changed it. And then I said, yeah, now it feels better for me.
Can you talk about what the experience of being at Eurovision as a songwriter was?
It's the best job in the world because you don't have to do anything. You can just enjoy, talk to people, see your song, hear your song. In the green room, you are with really great champagne. It's just a fun night when you're in a stadium and people are singing your song. With Arcade, it was like mind-blowing. That was the first time I had that experience. I just got goosebumps everywhere. And when we won, I cried my eyes out because it was just such a moment and everyone was singing it.
When you look at any other form of televised music competitions, it almost feels like Eurovision is the only one who's successfully been able to really highlight songwriters.
They should continue that until the last version of Eurovision, because what I do every day and what we all do every day is so special, but so time consuming. It takes so much of my life as well. And when in the end you don't get the credits for that, of course, from the people around you, it's amazing, but you also want this recognition in the normal world outside the music industry.
I think that's a perfect place to wrap up. Wouter, thank you so much for talking to us. This has been really great.
Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Euroverse.
So now we're going from one of the most successful Eurovision winning songs to the most recent winning Eurovision song. And we're talking about The Code. Who we're talking about is NYLAN and Benji Alasu.
Their approaches are even different from each other. So to start out, we talked with NYLAN, who comes from a background as a singer, as an instrumentalist, but his approach is very much that in a certain way of like a traditional producer, right? If you think about Wouter, you heard Wouter talk about how songwriting and production are very separate for him. He writes the song and then, the arrangement kind of comes afterwards. You'll sort of hear NYLAN talk about how it kind of is all one thing.
And one thing that will be very different to when we spoke with Ludo and Julian is their songwriting team. So we sat down with them together. Now, these songwriters, they all met through a songwriting camp.
Yes.
Benji, similarly to NYLAN, kind of lives in this songwriter-producer hybrid space.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting that we have both of them because, as you'll hear in the interview, even in these two artists who we talk about as having the same titles, you'll still hear differences.
Oh, absolutely. Let's remind ourselves of last year's winning song. This is Nemo's The Code.
Welcome to the show, let everybody know I'm done playing the game. I'll break out of the chains, you better buckle up. I'll pour another cup. This is my boy, so drink it up, my friend. Whoa, whoa, this story is I went to hell and back to find myself on track. I broke the code. Whoa.
We are here with NYLAN, who has written and produced many songs, including last year's Eurovision-winning hit, Nemo's The Code, and this year's song representing Cyprus, Theo Evans' Shhh. NYLAN, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So to start off, can you talk about how you first came to music and songwriting?
I grew up in a musical family. So my grandfather, he was a saxophone player on the jazz side of music. So I grew up with names like Charlie Parker, Miles Davis on the bebop side. And then I also grew up with a father who was a country pop artist in Norway in the 90s. Every time I walk past a guitar, my bad impulse control kind of makes me grab that guitar and just play it. I'm originally a singer. That's kind of how I went into study music after I was in the Norwegian army for a bit of like 2.5 years. But then I've always just known that I wanted to do music professionally. So I started studying in Liverpool at an institute called LIPA, Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts. and kind of switched halfway through there as I just intuitively felt like I wanted to be touching all kinds of parts of music creation, not just the vocals or the lyrics and that side of it. And after graduating in 2020, I wanted to live off of music from the get-go, which has been kind of a good engine into meeting new people, traveling all over Europe, Asia.
Can you talk about the difference between like writing a song for yourself and your own voice versus writing for another artist?
Writing for myself is quite a different thing because the artist is ultimately the one who's going to represent what the song is about. So when I write for myself, I have my own style. I have my own little weird things that I like to do that I kind of maybe would never bring into a session just because the building blocks for another artist's project is not really fitting. So in that case, I would always kind of start with a conversation to try to get to know the artist. If it's the first time I meet them, for instance, maybe we can compare notes if it's similar observations on things in life.
As someone who's a songwriter and a producer, in what ways do you think about those as two separate parts of the process?
Music production these days, it's kind of always integrated into things because you can always record things and start kind of messing about with the sounds from the get-go. So you have like an infinite amount of opportunities to start kind of from whichever angle works. So I would say like it really depends on the feeling in the room. Do we want this song to open up with like a strong statement lyrically? That would then make the whole start of the writing process be about that lyrical little motif that we're trying to make. Sometimes we are just really curious to see what happens if we just start pressing notes, putting a big reverb on it. Like, where does our mind go from there?
The Code was written at a songwriting camp in collaboration with Nemo, Benji Alasu, and Linda Dale. Can you talk about how that song came about?
I mean, a songwriting camp can be all different kinds of things. It's not like around the campfire with a with a guitar most of the time. I've never been to those ones. But in the case of the songwriting camp where we wrote the Code, this is one of the more organized ones. So this is the PRO, the rights collector in Switzerland, who kind of organizes this, hires some A&Rs, invites some labels to come to the listening session. It goes over, I think, 3 days of writing. And then there's the last day, which is the listening session. We ended up with like almost 40 songs. In the morning, you get separated into groups, which is a very kind of intense moment because it's like a roll of a dice in terms of the people that you'll meet, the kind of vision that the artist will have, which makes it super exciting because you basically then spread out everyone into their own studios for the day. And it's basically a blank sheet of paper and a question. What are we going to do today? This was day 2 of writing. And I'd met Nemo for lunch just the day before. And also I'd noticed the voice from just an open door in the studio from the day before. So I was like, this is going to be super exciting because I heard like how insanely good Nemo sings. I think we pretty early on start talking about a groove, the drum and bass kind of breakbeat groove. I think that was one of the first things Nemo said. We talked about musical background, like what music we love, basically showing each other songs. We'll listen to a lot of Queen, we'll listen to, I think, David Bowie. And from there, it went really, really, really quick. I think I just went to the keyboard. Benji and I almost said in unison, we need to start this with like a plucky sound. And that's when I just played the first notes that you'll hear. Nemo did the melody like almost instantly, the first start of the everybody. We kind of take a break in the actual making of these melodies and we're like, what if this part is like a big this and what if this part is like that? It went like clockwork, really. Like one of the closest moments to what I define as like absolute flow.
At what point did the sort of lyric concept come together? Like,
kind of what led everything to go so smoothly is that Nemo had kind of a vision, I think, from the start, and how that was kind of developed in explaining it in the moment. She started explaining how they felt, and it was freedom to kind of reply to that in terms of what we could do with it musically. And then Linda and Nemo kind of started talking about the lyric side of it. Me and Benji go on the musical side, listening to each other and kind of trying to build, let's say, two pillars at the same time.
Thinking about like the state that the song was in when you played it for people at the end of the camp, and then what happened afterwards.
The song was all there, like within
That's
a
amazing.
few hours. And then it's all about, like, generally writing all songs, you start with something and then you basically solve problems. Like, this part doesn't really make that part shine. You're problem solving all the time. And in this case, I think we're just in conversation, had a very clear plan about how the song would turn out. So all the arrangements, kind of the most of the feelings of the song were there. Most of the production was there. And then we kind of had a plan about bringing out at a later point the massive orchestra feeling to it.
Talking more generally about the songwriting camp process, for you as a writer, I guess, what are the sort of advantages and disadvantages of something that's that compressed?
You put quite a bit of pressure on writers and on artists, especially since you have people actually listening to what you made that day. You don't really have time to go in and revise anything. What you leave the studio with that day is what 40, 50, 60 people will listen to and judge in a way, especially when you come to these kind of Eurovision camps. I come to view this as kind of an exercise in trust, like kind of a cliche, but trusting the process. You have to go with your intuition because there's no time to really doubt. It's also kind of a test of the team. And sometimes it's not the best composition of people. Sometimes I'd say it's limiting in the way that you can't really think about all the different ways a song can go. You have to kind of narrow it. Being in a songwriting camp maybe requires more preparation for the artist. Whoever wants to express something in the lyrics, they would need to prepare before. From my side, I do around 10 camps a year. And the rest of the time, it's complete freedom. Should we write a verse today and then just go for vacation for 3 weeks and not do anything else? But then having in mind how productive you can be if you just force yourself to write one song in one day. Having that in mind is also like why I find songwriting camps so valuable.
I feel what's very common is that they'll pair two songwriters together on almost like songwriting dates almost. And I feel like it seems like in these camps, most of the time it's 3-4 people in the room. So if two people's vibe isn't quite work, there's still two other options.
You're completely right. Like, I'd say 3 or 4 people in a room is just more brains to analyze a complex problem solving situation, which is songwriting. And who's going to decide what to prioritize? Sometimes you need to grab the role of composing something to spark inspiration in others. Sometimes they're the ones who spark inspiration with you. If there's 3 people or 4 people, there's someone that might have an idea about why that's not a good idea, and then explain an alternative. And then you have a good conversation going that would never happen if it's like 2 people that kind of ride in the same style. And there's basically a bit more, not conflict, but like a turbulence, good turbulence, if that's even a songwriting phrase.
Yeah. What was your experience like being a songwriter at Eurovision?
It was wild. You come to one of the biggest TV productions on the planet, and you come there having kind of done your work. You go there and you realize that your song that you just made up out of nothing with people that you didn't know but now know as really good friends, trying to experience that in a moment was just a fantastic feeling. I'd also say that it's a way for people to view kind of the process of songwriting. Like, people go in and they really analyze these songs because it's a competition. And then that was also like a very, very interesting thing to kind of meet people backstage who are professionals, or like TV people who are curious about how we made the songs. Or you meet people in the streets who we were just going to the cafe with Nemo and the team, and people come up and they say something about like why they love the song, why they were surprised at this point. And for instance, like going into the second verse there where Nemo starts rapping.
Let me tell you a
tell by life for the good and the bad, better hold on tight. Who decides what's wrong, what's right? Everything is balance, everything's light. I got so much on my mind, and I've been no break all night. I'm so pumped, I'm so psyched, it's bigger than me, I'm getting so hyped.
The way it kind of like shocked a lot of people in the moment when they heard it, like, oh, that's like so surprising and sick. It's very interesting for a songwriter to hear like how much knowledge people have about songwriting. And that's, I think, Eurovision sets that apart from other events, is that level of analysis that the audience has.
With the Code winning Eurovision, how has that changed your life, your career, your trajectory as a songwriter, if it has at all?
It's definitely changed. I have had a lot of new opportunities, doors open, people that I've met in places that I wouldn't be able to without winning. And then there's the balance between like, should I change the way that I work? Should I focus more on just going into all these new doors, or should I actually stay grounded? That's like the question that I think all of us were going through. And where we landed is like, yes, it's changed, but also we've had a strategy that obviously worked.
At this year's Eurovision, you're a writer on Cyprus's song, Shhh.
Hush, hush, if you know my name, then please don't repeat it. Hush, hush, if you know my name, then keep it a secret.
That was an invitation from a production company in Cyprus that invited us to come write in Greece. And they had chosen the artist without Theo even knowing it yet. So we knew that we were writing for Theo, but Theo didn't know that that's what we were doing. We were presented with an idea that Dimitris had, like some kind of developed tracks and melodies. So it was a bit more building blocks rather than just a blank sheet. And the same way that I always write is just, let's talk about this thing. Let's kind of create some kind of limitations in terms of what do we see this being on stage? How can we make kind of the mysticism, the lyrics work together with the harmony and music? And what type of song are we dealing with here? And then just basically having that plan, which is a very vague plan, just launch and try to execute. And we did that over a longer period than what we're doing in the songwriting. I think we developed most of the songwriting in like 1 or 2 days, where we went back and kind of revised some of the storylines, it being kind of a riddle. It was more like pieces to solve like that.
MGP watchers will be familiar with Elsie Bay. You've worked a lot with her.
To you, in 100 years, no one will know.
Can you talk about that collaboration and how it came about?
Yeah, so we're actually partners, and we met.
Oh, me.
Yeah. Maybe not many people know that. And we met at a songwriting camp a few years ago. And then during COVID, we kind of extended a songwriting camp indefinitely, because there's a studio in Norway. It's called the Wood Studios. There were no restrictions to kind of work together. And then there was a songwriting camp, I think 2021, where Elsie just wanted to stay and then write for a few more days, and then basically not go back to lockdown in Oslo.
Right.
And that's when we kind of started working together a lot. And then that turned into love.
That's amazing. Are there certain qualities that, draw you towards certain artists or make you want to write for them?
I think most of the time it's just pure compatibility. First melody sang, you kind of just know if it's a good match. I've never really worked with someone where it turned out great without it being like a talking the same language kind of thing. And in the way that I kind of work with new artists or new songwriters is just listening to their songs. Sometimes I would just listen for the lyrics and the message of the song. Sometimes I would listen to the production style, and I would kind of always latch onto something that I'm like, oh, that's sick. That's something that I would love trying to do in a different way, or taking that further into a new song.
Does the process change up a lot from who you're working with?
There's no rules really that I follow. If someone has something that I'm like, that sounds very strange, I would just let them develop the idea fully, because maybe it's me who's stupid, who just can't really see it. And then sometimes it just clicks and it's just like, how can I have not realized how fucking great that idea was? And then over the years, that has turned into kind of an intuition about how to collaborate with people, how to communicate, whether an idea has problems in it, or if I'm like, you keep doing exactly what you're doing and I'll sit here and drink tea until that whole thing is developed, because you don't need my help at the moment.
How do you navigate disagreement?
Be honest, not like trash the idea, but either try and find something in it. There's always a good idea within a bad idea. Even if it's one note, you would be able to develop something from it. Kind of encouraging people to reach their true potential in developing an idea. I think that's also important in songwriting, is to not come into the habit of saying that everything is great, because then you'll end up kind of off course.
How has your process changed with experience?
It has made me prioritize things differently, like less production, more songwriting, in terms of what are we really developing here. Yes, texture has a lot to do with it, but most of the time is melodies over chord progressions and motifs in the track. Stop thinking about what instruments are actually in the production and start thinking about what function has it got. Does this horn section surprise me? And is that what I want it to do? I don't need to think about whether it's 3 trombones and 5 saxophones that do that.
That's a perfect way to wrap up.
Thank you so much,
Thank
guys.
you so much.
It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you so much. This has been great.
Euroverse.
We are here with Benji Alasu, who has written and produced last year's Eurovision winning hit, Nemo's The Code, and this year's song representing Armenia, Parg's Survivor. Benji, welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Can you talk about how you first came to music and songwriting?
My earliest memory of music was we had a piano at home, and my parents had the great idea to send me to have some piano lessons. This kind of like moved along to also play every Sunday in church, because I grew up very religious. It was just not myself playing the piano, but to also play in a band. That was kind of like the starting point of doing music.
As someone who's a songwriter and a producer, are you already thinking about arrangement and sound as you're writing?
My writing is actually almost only arrangement and melodies. I'm a very bad lyric writer because I didn't grow up speaking English. And the main music I listened to when I was a kid was English music. And I didn't understand the words. I only heard melodies. My brain is still wired like that, to only hear melodies and to hear sounds and arrangements.
Listen, the Swedes have done very well
Yeah, I
with
was gonna
sometimes
say.
misunderstanding
Yes.
English.
On the music side, does it start with a melodic idea? Does it start with a beat, a sound, or a chord progression?
Every session is different.
Yeah.
Every song is different. And every artist and every songwriter is different.
Right.
Also, every day is different. So you kind of need to adapt to that. Most of the time, what I like to do is to be prepared with like, kind of like what the vibe is. I check out the music that the artist has put out already, so we know what kind of like the playground will be. Usually we will just talk in the first hour and see, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? What is inspiring you at the moment? Through that conversation, we start to build a concept.
The Code was written at a songwriting camp in collaboration with Nemo, NYLAN, and Linda Dale.
It was on the second day of a songwriting camp in Switzerland. Nemo came into the studio and said, I already made a cool song. I just want to chill today because I'm a bit tired. So we asked, okay, what's chill for you? And the first thing that Nemo said was, yeah, I like drum and bass. So that's chill to me. So we started to fiddle around with like a drum bass loop and with the main melody that you hear in the beginning, the boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. That was the basis of the song. And then basically so many ideas were thrown into the room. And we had this idea of, we say yes to everything and we will try to make it work. That was kind of like the unwritten rule that we had in the studio. It was a very creative game of ping pong, so to speak. The song, as you hear now, the arrangement and the song was written that day. We tried to change things after that session. We tried new melodies. We tried also a bit of new lyrics, but nothing worked out. The only thing that changed a lot was we had to get like really good strings into the production, because of course we didn't have like an orchestra there, and we knew, okay, we need like someone who can write notes and who can replicate that huge sound. We tried to get the best out of the song, and we need people who are the best in like doing a string arrangement, and we need other people who bring in other elements. So in the end, there were so many people involved, like 7 producers, I think, which is not normal for a pop song. It's normal for a rap song, like all these producers.
Right.
Everybody had an opinion, which can be so tricky with so many people.
Yeah. So you recorded those strings? That's not a patch?
Oh, in the end, it was just plugins, but we knew we needed one person that can compose all these things. I just sent him like some sketches of like ideas that I had. And to my surprise, which was so funny, some of these elements he still took in.
With that many people involved, like you have songwriters in different places, you got a TV channel, you got multiple producers.
Yeah.
How are decisions made?
There was one executive producer. His name is Pele Loriano. He has so much Eurovision experience, and he kind of like put that all together. But of course, everybody wanted to have their creative say in it. That was kind of like a personal thing for me. I was like, okay, am I even needed here? Because there are so many people involved. So what is my role here anyway now? Yeah. But it turned out that every single bit that everybody put into that song was so important in the end.
Generally, like, what is your feeling about songwriting camps?
In a songwriting camp, there's this creative spirit. It's not just you and an artist and probably in a third person. It's like 30 people in one place at the same time with the same mission of writing the best song that they possibly can. This spirit of like, okay, we are all creatives, we are all in the same place, and we all have the same mission is something that you cannot replicate. Sometimes as songwriters or producers, you feel so alone because you're just like in the studio or wherever working on your things. And all of a sudden you are together with so many people who have kind of like the same idea. And of course you want to perform well because in the end of the camp, people will hear it. So there's this need for excellency. I like to be in that situation where it's like, okay, game on, but I totally understand that it's not the right environment for everyone, because sometimes you have people who are like, their writing process goes on for like a month to finish a song.
What was your experience of being a songwriter at Eurovision?
So my job was done. I was just there day drinking, basically, just celebrating. That was my job, man.
Yeah, it's part of the job, I have to say.
It was kind of like an experience of a lifetime, I would say, because it was my first song at Eurovision. We won this composer award for the song. So that was a special moment to me. In the rehearsals, we had the chance to sit with the crowd in the stadium. That was amazing to see that this song that so many people worked on so much is finally coming to life on stage.
Given that the Code won, how has it changed your sort of trajectory as a songwriter, your career trajectory?
Yeah. I planned to go to LA anyway after the Eurovision. And I just went there and I met Rosalind. We just had a small writing session in LA. And I also had the chance to meet through the Code, the guitar player of Maroon 5. His name is Jesse Carmichael. He's a great composer and great guitar player and just a great human being. That was kind of like a highlight to see like such a musician and such an artist, to just have this conversation with him. And that was really, truly inspiring. So that happened right after Eurovision. And the trajectory now is basically to do at least one song that has the same impact, but not in the Eurovision world, but more in the pop world, more in the radio world. The pop spectrum is now wider than ever before. I mean, we have Billie Eilish on this spectrum, and then we have Maneskin, I don't know, here doing rock stuff. One person that has inspired me and is still inspiring me continuously is Ryan Tedder from One Republic.
Yeah.
This guy is a genius. I would love to write a song once with him, or even be signed to his publishing company.
I'm pretty sure Ryan Tedder's a listener. So
Ryan, hi, Ryan.
So
Ryan, if you hear this,
get that deal made.
Yeah, get that deal made, please. No. Amazing.
You're a writer on Armenia's song in this
Yeah.
year's Eurovision, Survivor.
I'm a survivor, stay alive. Do or die, my friend, I'm a fighter. I'm a survivor, won't be tired. Break from the pain, second place, I'll be mine.
In Switzerland, at least, like the Eurovision stage is kind of like the most important stage as a songwriter or producer. Maybe even Germany, France, Italy, like all the East European countries. So it was kind of like logical to me. Okay, if I want to grow as a producer and as a songwriter, I need to try to work in that industry. Like Arcade from Duncan, Laurence, or like Maneskin. I think that's where I saw a lot of potential, and that's why I thought, okay, I can go down this route, although I'm very pop. I got invited by Park's manager to maybe join that song, and it resonated with me. I heard the chorus, and I had a bunch of ideas. And I told him, yeah, please send me just over the stems so I can just work on the track. This song was, again, very collaborative. In the end, I think we were 4 or 5 producers again.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the process also because I did whatever I thought was cool, sent it over to Park, and then they finished it with Thomas Gison. He did Tattoo, or was part of that team. I remember we didn't have verses yet. So I think especially the first verse, I was just sending him voice messages on WhatsApp with like ideas of like mumbling stuff. It was just gibberish, basically. The best decision, I think, was the bridge.
Breathe all these souls. Never forget who you are.
Again, I just did like a really short sketch thing with my strings. And I was like, I think we can do something really cinematic and dramatic here. And then I think Thomas was that. I don't know how, but man, he created such a world.
So moving to the way you collaborate with artists, what are some qualities in an artist that draw you to them or make you want to write for them?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. Something that really draws me into it is, of course, the musical aspect. If I kind of like vibe with them, but also if the person is inspiring, if the artist is carrying this spark with them in the sense of, whoa, okay, this person is so cool. I just want to hang out. There's one artist I work closely with. Her name is called Miloon.
I'm torn. Why do Owens make a perfect storm? Either way, I'm washed up on the shore.
She's kind of like the perfect example to me that is not afraid of trying out things and to be completely themselves and to make me feel something when I hear their music. I think it's a combination of these things.
Can you just, using that as an example, like talk about how that collaboration started?
That was a funny one. Her mom texted me years ago.
Amazing.
I think her text was, hey, I'm Ariane. I'm a vocal coach and I have a daughter and she wants to do music.
When you meet an artist and begin working with them, what are some of your initial conversations?
I just want to get to know them. Like, what's important to you? Do you have a dog or do you have whatever? What does your life look like? Why are you here? Why do you do music? Because there's so much worth in every story. So I don't want to rush that process. Sometimes we schedule 1 hour just to talk and then it ends up by 3 or 4 hours. I want to give artists like a safe space because it's the worst feeling if you go to a studio and you feel stressed about something. Yeah. Some people, they just need 10 minutes. They're like, okay, where's the vocal booth? Let me just sing that. And some people need like 3 hours to feel a bit more comfortable. I try to be as vulnerable as I can to build that connection. If I notice, okay, somebody is really uncomfortable or like nervous, I just start talking about how my week was and how my wife is doing and how my life is going in general. And if they want a coffee or tea or a matcha or whatever.
Can you talk about a time where you've had creative disagreement with a collaborator and how you worked through that?
Now it's way easier to do for me because it's detached from who I am as a person. But in the beginning, and I think everybody does that in the creative business, it's like, I made this. And then someone's like, yeah, I don't like that. You're like, you hate me. You. The longer you do it, the more you understand that it's good to have disagreements in order to find the right song. For example, yesterday we had a session The song was written basically, and then the artist was like getting into tunnel vision, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't like it." We were like, "Why? Like it sounds pretty cool, right?" He was like, "Yeah, no, I want to make it cooler." And then he started to write a completely different song. We were like, "We get you, but we think it's a production thing. Just give me 10 minutes to do the changes to make it sound cooler for you." Then it worked out because it was just a production thing. But we had to have this conversation to figure out what he's missing.
You've worked with Remo Ferrer on Not Okay.
I'm not the one to point the blame, but you are out, and I'm not okay.
Can you talk about the process of writing that song?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a songwriting camp just for him to get like some songs. I think on the first or second day, we started to write the song, and it was a completely different production in the beginning. It was slower, it was a different key. Only the melodies and the lyrics are the same. But then the management and the whole team was like, okay, no, this is cool, but we just need to do a lot of changes because it's very catchy. And if another producer finishes it, you are always confronted with your ego, right? It's like, man, what did I do wrong? Like, they hate me. And blah, blah, blah. That was kind of like the first time where I felt that, where I was like, okay, what is wrong with me as a producer? But then it turned out to be a really, really cool song, and it worked pretty well on radio.
How has your process changed with experience?
The biggest thing that I learned was actually after Eurovision, after the code, because all of a sudden you want every song to be the code or kind of like to be like that, right? And it's you pretty rapidly you learn that this is not possible, and just to be okay with that, and also that I can trust myself, that I can trust my instincts, because a lot of producers or songwriters, they struggle with self-doubt in the sense of, oh, I'm not good enough, or my ideas are not good enough, and I'm just here because whatever. And this is not true. Every time when you are in a room with someone, there's a reason why you are in that room. And that's because you give worth to this group. Right now, I'm pretty content with myself. And I'm still hunting to get these bigger songs and to write these bigger songs and write with Ryan Tedder. But I'm I'm not hunted anymore, but I'm hunting.
I love that.
I'm hunting something. I'm not hunted by myself and by my fears and doubts.
Thinking about the entire process of putting together a song, like what's the most fun part for you, and what is the part that frustrates you the most?
So the first time when you start writing a song, it's always the most terrifying part, because you don't know what's going to happen. It's a blank page every time. I think Ian Kirkpatrick said that once. He's Dua Lipa's producer.
Oh, amazing.
Or he did like Don't Start Now and all these other hits. And once he said, yeah, every time when he starts a new song, he's just freaking out. What am I going to do? Like, where is this going and stuff like that? And this is true. Like in the beginning, you don't know what's going to happen. But the best part is when you get to a point where everybody in the room is like, okay, this is a vibe. This is cool. This is going somewhere.
What are you working on now that most excites you?
One thing that is totally out of my day-to-day job, basically, is I'm part of the team to work on the production music for the Eurovision this year, which means all the musical and show elements that are besides the songs. It was so refreshing to work on something that is longer than 3 minutes sometimes, you know?
Absolutely.
To work on pop songs, on radio songs, and the next day you are in a meeting with 30 people talking about how the lightning should look like. Yeah.
That's amazing. Benji, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been really, really cool.
And we'll be in Basel, so maybe we'll see you there.
Oh,
yes.
No
Yes.
way. Okay, yeah. Please, we need to meet up.
Oh,
Definitely.
absolutely.
I'd love to.
Yeah. That'd be really fun.
Euroverse.
Charlie, I have to almost check my list. There's so many people to thank. We had so many guests.
Yes. I would like to thank the Academy.
Yes. Thank you to Wouter Hardy.
Yes.
Thank you to NYLAN. Thank you to Benji Alasu.
And thank you to you, Magnus.
Oh my gosh. You love thanking me.
I do love thanking you
Well,
because you do
you know
so
what?
much.
And thank you, Charlie.
Oh, good. Oh, that really just warmed my little heart.
I really enjoyed speaking to these songwriters, and we will talk to more songwriters. But first, we need to have our last live of this season and pick New York City's favorite Eurovision song.
Yes, our final live is May 1st.
If you're listening to this when it comes out, that is tomorrow.
So
if you're listening to this a day late, put your shoes on.
Yeah, you got to get into a cab because
and get yourself to Rise Bar
mhm.
now. But again, we still love you if you're not in New York City and can't come to our lives.
Yes.
We'll be back with another new episode next week.
Yes.
As we are pretty much on our way to Basel.
Yes. We are broadcasting from the plane.
Basically. But until then,
Happy Eurovision.